Prologue: When the Earth awoke. They called it progress. The drilling, the mining, the choking smoke rising into the sky. They took and took, carving deep into the bones of the earth, bleeding her dry. And one day, the earth fought back. The ground trembled for 7 days. Oceans rose and swallowed cities whole. Forests burned, then regrew thicker, wilder, alive in ways no one understood. And from the deepest cracks in the soil they came, the demons, born of stone and fire, sentinels of nature's fury. They did not eat, they did not sleep. They only hunted humans. Every scream was answered by silence. Every town turned to ash. But Earth spared her own. The trees stood tall. Rivers ran clean again. Animals returned. Free, fearless. The world grew green once more. 200 years have passed. What's left of humanity hides behind flickering walls of old-world light, clutching blades of silver, praying the night won't come. Because the demons are still out there, and Earth has not forgiven. Chapter 1. A flicker in the shield. The gates of Terminus creaked open, their rusted hinges screaming like a warning. Ryder passed beneath them without a word, the silver blade strapped to his back, catching a dull glint from the afternoon sun. His horse, a shaggy beast with scars on its legs, plodded forward without need for command. The town hadn't changed. Patchwork homes built from old-world ruins, scrap metal welded into roofs, cloth banners stitched from plastic and denim. It all sagged under the weight of survival. He tied the reins to a bent traffic sign and walked toward the market square, where stalls buzzed with quiet tension. No one laughed in Terminus. Not anymore. Ryder moved to a table selling strips of dried meat and unlabeled bottles. The merchant avoided his eyes. "Still alive, then," came a voice from behind. Ryder turned just enough to see him. Mickey. Older, a little tougher, but will always be second best. But still the same wary confidence in his voice. The same scar under his chin. The one Ryder had given him, accidentally, during training all those years ago. Ryder gave him a nod. "Barely. You're not just passing through, are you?" Ryder didn't answer. Mickey took that as permission to keep talking. "Field's dying," he said quietly. "Shield glitched last night, just for a second, but enough for 2 scouts to spot it." Ryder raised an eyebrow. "Demons?" "Not yet, but it's a matter of time." Mickey tilted his head toward a stall where an older man stood hunched over a pile of broken equipment. His coat was smeared with grease, and one of his hands was clearly mechanical, clicking softly as he adjusted a tool. "That's Kellen," Mickey said, "old-world engineer. Says he knows where to find a new power core." Ryder looked at the man, then back at Mickey. "Are you wanting me to play escort?" "I want you to keep the town from becoming a crater full of bones." Before Ryder could speak, Kellen approached, eyes sunken, voice trembling. "Please," the man said, "I know how it sounds, but I helped install one of those cores, back before everything turned. There's a facility, southeast of here, buried in the ruins near the river bend." He took a step closer, desperation trembling in every syllable. "I can get us in. I can get it working, but I won't make it 5 steps without someone like you." Ryder remained still, no emotion, just silence. Mickey leaned in. "He's telling the truth, Ryder. He's got maps, access codes etched into old metal cards. This could save us." Ryder's eyes drifted back to the shield. It flickered, barely, but enough. Like a dying breath, he sighed through his nose. "Dawn," he muttered. "Be ready, I don't wait." The morning haze lingered over Terminus like a shroud, muffling sound and softening the jagged skyline of salvaged buildings and rust-welded towers. Ryder sat alone beneath the awning of a crumbling ruin near the eastern wall, where the force field shimmered faintly like heat off stone. A low hum pulsed in the distance, the sound of the barrier doing its job. He crouched on a flat slab of concrete, methodically sharpening a silver shortsword against a whetstone. Sparks flicked off with every pass, catching the edge of the light. Next to him, 3 more blades lay arranged in perfect alignment. A long knife, a machete, and a curved fang-like weapon designed for close work. Each one was meticulously maintained, every surface honed to a mirror finish. Ryder moved with ritualistic precision. The sharpening was more than preparation. It was meditation. A quiet crunch of boots on grit drew his attention. "Didn't think you'd be up this early," Mickey said as he approached. His silhouette was bulky in the gloom, wrapped in scavenger leathers and light armor reinforced with scavenged plating. His weapons were all bladed, a broad silver cleaver on his hip and a double-edged hand scythe on his back. Ryder didn't look up. Never really sleep. Mickey huffed a short laugh. "Yeah, figures." He leaned against a shattered column, arms folded, watching the older man. They stayed that way for a moment, silent but not uncomfortable. "You're really going to do this run?" Mickey asked finally. "Take that engineer all the way to the outer fringe?" Ryder paused his sharpening, looked up. "You told him I was the best." "I did," Mickey admitted. "Didn't think you'd actually agree." Ryder shrugged. "The part he needs is real. I know where it is. That field goes down, Terminus is done." Mickey studied him, eyes narrowing. "You've been out there more than anyone. You know what's changing. The demons, they're not the same." Ryder nodded slowly. "They're adapting." That single word held weight. Mickey didn't press. Instead, he glanced over his shoulder at the open gate, where a group of scavengers were prepping for departure. A caravan of patched-together wagons and riders on horses waited just beyond. "I'm heading out too," Mickey said. "Small party. Northwest Ridge, salvage run. Should be easy." "Nothing's easy anymore," Ryder replied. "Yeah, well," Mickey hesitated. "Just keep your eyes open. There's a whisper going around town. Someone's looking for you." That got Ryder's attention. His gaze lifted, sharp now. "Someone?" "Not sure who. Just a few scavvers talking, old-world types. Not local. Came through quiet, asking questions. Didn't like the smell of them." Ryder didn't respond right away. He wiped the blade clean and slid it into its sheath. His face gave nothing away, but his posture shifted slightly, like a man preparing for a fight he knew was coming. "I appreciate the warning," he said. Mickey nodded. "Just figured I owed you, for before." "You don't owe me anything." "Still, watch your back." With that, Mickey turned and walked toward the caravan, the morning mist swallowing him slowly. Ryder watched him go, then stood and slung his weapons into place. Far beyond the walls of Terminus, the world waited, lush, green, and deadly. Demon nests crawled under the surface, broken cities whispered of things that had forgotten how to die. And something new was stirring, something old, and Ryder would face it, like he always had, alone. The eastern gate of Terminus groaned open with the weight of old hinges and older warnings. Beyond it, the world lay wrapped in morning mist, lush, deceptive, and crawling with death. Ryder stood just inside the threshold, motionless, scanning the tree line. His blades were sheathed but visible, the silent glint of silver speaking louder than words. Behind him, the engineer fidgeted with his pack straps. The man was younger than Ryder, maybe late 20s, with a narrow frame and nervous energy. He wore scavenger's leathers that looked barely broken in. A rolled-up schematic tube was strapped to his back beside a long silver-tipped pole used more for probing than fighting. "You sure this is the right way?" he asked, trying to sound casual and failing. Ryder didn't answer immediately. He took a few steps forward, eyes locked on the horizon. "There's only one way that doesn't get us killed before sundown," Ryder said. "Try to keep up." The engineer swallowed and followed, boots crunching awkwardly over gravel and root. He looked back once at the gate as it began to shut behind them. "What's your name again?" he asked, half jogging to catch up. "I didn't give it." A pause. "I'm Callan," the engineer offered awkwardly. Ryder gave a grunt that might have been acknowledgement, might not. They moved through the overgrown ruins of what once had been suburbs, collapsed homes, vine-wrapped playgrounds, cars overtaken by roots. Birds called out, insects buzzed, the green silence pressed in. Callan glanced around, gripping the silver pole a little tighter. "So, you've done this kind of thing before?" Ryder stepped over a fallen fence. "You ask a lot of questions for someone who's supposed to walk quiet." Callan flushed and dropped his voice. "Sorry, I've never been outside the field." Ryder slowed slightly, just enough to let Callan catch up. Stay close, don't run. If something comes, don't scream. That silenced Callan for a while. They pressed on, the sun beginning to burn through the mist. From time to time, Ryder paused to listen. Once, he crouched and touched a line of disturbed moss. Footprints. Old, wrong shape. Callan didn't ask what they were. He didn't want to know. They weren't even half a day out of Terminus, and already the quiet had changed. They moved in silence for another hour, the forest thickening with every step. Sunlight barely broke through the canopy now, reduced to slivers across moss-covered stone and half-sunken roadways. The air smelled of damp earth and something older, wilder. Callan's breathing had grown shallow and quick, but he said nothing, afraid even his voice would stir something from the undergrowth. Ryder ahead moved like he was part of the terrain, calm, aware, unhurried. Then Ryder stopped, hand raised, silent. Callan froze mid-step. His eyes followed Ryder's gaze to a twisted tree just off the path. From a low branch hung strips of flesh, tan, leathery, dried by sun and wind. Beneath it, a smear of black ichor stained the grass. A feeding spot, Callan whispered, barely audible. Ryder crouched and studied the scene. Number marking territory, pack of day demons. Callan turned pale. Wait, pack? Ryder stood. Yeah, don't move. The silence grew loud, then a rustle behind them. Ryder spun just as a gaunt, long-limbed figure burst from the bushes, its pale, angular body loping on all fours, eyes black pits that locked onto Callan. Callan screamed and stumbled backward. Run! Ryder barked. But Callan ran the wrong way, straight into the woods. Damn it! Ryder chased, boots slamming into the dirt. He tore through branches and thorn, hearing the demon's shriek echo behind. Callan's panic was loud, too loud. He was crashing through brush like a beacon. Ryder leapt over a log and caught up just in time to see the demon lunging. Silver flashed. Ryder tackled Callan sideways and rolled. The demon skidded past, hissing. Ryder rose in one smooth motion, drawing his fang-like blade. The demon snarled, its body twitching unnaturally as it circled. It feinted once, then lunged. Ryder ducked low, sidestepped, and drove the blade upward, straight into its chest. A squelch, a crack, a gurgling screech. The body spasmed, then slumped into the moss. Silence. Ryder turned to Callan, who was still on the ground, wide-eyed and gasping. You ran, Ryder said. I thought... You don't think. You listen. You stay close, or you die. Callan's mouth opened, but Ryder was already walking. Callan scrambled up, heart hammering, and followed in silence. They didn't speak for the next 2 hours. When the sun began to dip, Ryder veered off the overgrown road and pushed through a narrow gap between fallen trees. Behind the dense brush was a structure, almost invisible until they were right on top of it. A crumbled stone drainage tunnel sunk into the side of a hill, nearly swallowed by vines. He pulled aside a curtain of moss and ducked in. Callan followed. Inside was cool and dry, old-world concrete wrapped in green roots and silence. A few scavenged supplies were tucked into a dry corner, blankets, flint, a small container of clean water. Someone had been here before, Ryder. He knelt and started a fire with practiced efficiency, the spark catching instantly. Orange light flickered off the walls. The flicker danced across Ryder's face, painting shadows across old scars. Callan sat stiffly, his voice barely above a whisper. Have you lost people out here? Ryder didn't answer at first. He stared into the flames like they held answers no one else could see. Yes. The word fell like stone. Callan nodded, then unrolled his mat. I won't run again. You'd better not, Ryder muttered. Next time, I won't save you. Callan looked up, uncertain if it was a warning or a promise. Outside, the forest darkened. Far off, a howl echoed through the green. Not a dog. Not anything that once was. Ryder added a small log to the fire, then leaned back, eyes never closing, never resting. The night had come, and it belonged to monsters. The woods were too quiet. Mickey kept his pace steady, but his hand never drifted far from his weapon. He'd been out in the wastes long enough to know when silence wasn't natural, it was deliberate. The The trees here didn't creak. The wind barely touched the ground. Even the birds, if there were any left, had decided to shut up. Behind him, the scavenging crew he was escorting trudged along, boots crunching over dead leaves and moss-covered concrete. They were good people, nervous but decent. The kind Terminus still managed to churn out when it wasn't falling apart. They trusted Mickey, maybe too much. "They're adapting," Ryder had said before they split. "You sure?" "I don't guess." That conversation had clung to him like smoke since the moment he stepped outside the walls. Demons were always a nightmare, but smart ones. That changed everything. The group passed under what used to be a roadside sign, now twisted metal and ivy. Mickey's horse sense prickled. He slowed. "Hold up," he muttered, just loud enough. They stopped. No complaints. That alone told him they felt it too, even if they didn't know what it was. He scanned the tree line. The light here was dimmer, the forest thicker. Overgrown suburban decay, fences long crumbled, plastic toys half swallowed by moss, windows staring empty from gutted houses. The kind of place you'd expect ghosts, not demons. But the difference out here, one could gut you. The other was a story. A branch snapped off to the right. Not the kind that falls, the kind that gets stepped on. Mickey didn't hesitate. He turned, blade sliding from its sheath with a clean rasp, and dropped into a ready stance. "Blades out," he said flatly. "Something's watching." The scavengers moved slower than he liked, but they obeyed. One fumbled, another swore under his breath. The wind picked up, just a touch, enough to carry a scent with it. Rot. It was faint but familiar, not quite human, not quite dead. Mickey's eyes narrowed as he stared into the trees, muscles wound tight. Something was there, and it hadn't run. It was waiting. The group had fallen quiet. Even the crunch of boots on dead leaves softened, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Mickey's hand rested near his blade. His eyes flicked between movement and shadow. Learning to spot the difference was the difference out here. The difference between coming back and not. A broken swing swayed in the wind, its rusted chains creaking above a moss-covered yard. Plastic toys, once bright and stupidly cheerful, lay cracked and faded, half swallowed by the earth. A stuffed animal with no eyes slumped in the mud. This place hadn't been touched in decades. Or maybe it had, just not by people. He raised a hand. The group froze. "Something's watching us," he said low, like it would matter. Like the things out here gave a damn about whispers. One of the scavengers shifted nervously, his hand gripping a makeshift spear. "Day demon?" "Maybe," Mickey murmured. "But it's not showing itself. That's not like them." A crow took flight from a rooftop with a sharp cry. The trees ahead shivered. "Circle up," Mickey said, "weapons out." And just like that, the silence broke. The silence after the noise was always worse. Mickey stood still, one boot forward, hand resting on the hilt of his blade. His eyes scanned the forest, trained and cold. The others behind him, 3 scavengers and a guard, shifted nervously, blades half drawn. The trees here were denser. Old pine and twisted oaks coiled together with vines and moss. What light made it through felt grey and cold. The remnants of old lives were everywhere, a rusted mailbox buried in ivy, a child's tricycle half swallowed by soil, the broken husk of a house staring with shattered windows. Mickey's fingers tapped twice against the hilt. A signal. Hold. Then it came again. Crunch. Not the sound of claws or something slithering. Boots. Purposeful. Confident. Mickey shifted his weight, drawing his blade just slightly. "Eyes front," he muttered to the group behind him. "Could be demons. Could be worse." The trees ahead rustled, and then 2 figures stepped through the brush. Mickey's jaw clenched as he saw them. One, tall and built like a walking tank, with a sword strapped across his back. The other, shorter but wiry, a black spear in hand, her eyes alive with mischief. Ellie smirked. "Well, that was dramatic. You always draw first, Mickey?" Oakley raised a brow, his usual stoic calm in place. "You gonna stab us, or can we talk?" Mickey didn't lower his blade just yet. "Could have been anyone. You two walk like ghosts." Ellie gave a quick glance at Oakley, amused. "That's kind of the point." With a heavy breath, Mickey finally sheathed his weapon. "It's good to see you, I think. But you damn near got yourselves killed sneaking up like that." Oakley shrugged. "If we're still alive, can't have been that close." "You're lucky I'm the one on watch," Mickey muttered, glancing toward the scavengers who were just now exhaling. Ellie stepped forward, planting her spear lightly in the dirt. "We've been tracking a group," she said. "Saw them pass not long ago, about 6 or 7, armed but sloppy." Mickey frowned. "Raiders?" "Could be," Oakley said. "Foot spacing was off. Looked like they were trying to move quiet but didn't know how. One of them dropped a ration pack, new seal, military issue." "That's not common," Mickey said, folding his arms. "Nope," Ellie agreed, "and they're heading east." Oakley pointed through the trees, past the wreckage of a sunken roof, beyond the twisting remains of an old jungle gym. Mickey turned to follow the direction with his eyes, a low ache twisted in his gut. "That's," he muttered, "that's the way Ryder went." The forest suddenly seemed a little darker. He took a slow breath, the weight of it all landing. "You think they're after him?" Oakley's mouth twitched, half a nod. "We didn't see him, just the tracks. But the way they moved, someone's leading them. Whoever it is, they're not scavengers." Ellie added, "And if they're hunting, they're not hunting game." Mickey looked over his shoulder at the scavenger crew, a bunch of tired, half-trained civilians carrying sacks and tools. He clenched his jaw. "I need to get these people to safe ground," he said, "but if Ryder's walking into something—" He didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. Oakley offered a grim smile. "We'll keep trailing the raiders. You finish your run." Ellie leaned against her spear, eyeing Mickey. "Unless you'd rather switch roles." Mickey let out a dry chuckle. "Not likely." Still, his gaze lingered in the direction they'd pointed. Something about it sat wrong. Ryder could handle himself, but if these weren't ordinary raiders— "Stay sharp," Mickey said, voice lower now. "If you catch up to them before I do, don't engage unless you have to." Oakley nodded. "We'll be shadows." Ellie gave him a salute with 2 fingers. "Try not to get too comfortable out here without us." Then they turned, slipping back into the trees like they'd never been there. Mickey stood still for a moment longer, watching the branches sway where they'd passed. Then he turned back to the group. "Let's move," he said, but his eyes kept drifting east. The morning broke slow and colorless, filtered through a dull ceiling of cloud. Ryder sat crouched near the remains of their fire, turning a small stick over in his fingers, its charred end whispering smoke. Callan emerged from the hollowed-out husk of an old delivery truck they'd used for shelter, rubbing his eyes and flexing a bruised shoulder. The world around them was still, unnaturally still. No wind, no birds, no insect hum. Just the dense silence of the forest pressing down on them. They were deep in what had once been suburbia, now a maze of twisted trees and skeletal buildings. Branches jutted through crumbled roofs. Ivy choked everything. As they packed up, Ryder paused. He'd felt it, not a sound but a presence. His hand drifted to the hilt of his silver blade. From deeper in the trees, something moved. Not a demon, a man. He stumbled into view like a ghost, bloodied, gaunt, wrapped in patchy armor strapped together from old riot gear and motorcycle leather. His eyes were wide, glassy with exhaustion and fear. Don't move," he rasped, raising a hand, not in threat, but in warning. Ryder didn't. Callan reached for his own weapon, but waited on Ryder's cue. The man staggered closer, falling to one knee. His breathing was ragged, like he'd been running for miles with something on his heels. "They're changing," the scavenger hissed. "You don't understand. They dash." Ryder stepped forward. "Who?" "The day demons," he whispered. "I saw a pack, 8 of them. They didn't make a sound, not one. Just moved like wolves, coordinated, eyes tracking, flanked a caravan without even snarling. No frenzy, just precision." He looked up, sweat and grime streaking his face. "They're not beasts anymore, they're planning." Behind him the trees creaked. Ryder's head snapped up. Too late. From the tree line, movement. Blinding fast, a blur of sinew and pale, scarred flesh. 1, then 2, then 5 more. Day demons, but not like before. Their limbs were leaner, muscle taut under mottled skin. Eyes glinted yellow, but not wild, focused. They didn't scream, they didn't roar, they charged in silence. Ryder grabbed Callan by the arm and shoved him back. "Run!" The scavenger turned too slow. Claws found him, dragged him down. No cry, just a wet sound, fast and final. Ryder unsheathed his blade, silver catching what little light there was, and stood his ground as the first demon lunged. The fight began in silence. Not the kind of silence that comes with peace, but the tense, strangling quiet that coils around the throat just before violence erupts. The birds had stopped. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ryder felt it first, the shift in the air, a flicker of movement high on his left. He twisted just as the demon dropped from the roof of a rusted hatchback, talons stretched, jaws split wide in a silent snarl. Ryder rolled, boots crunching through wet leaves and broken glass, and came up slicing. His blade carved through tendon, a pale spray of blood bursting out. The demon stumbled, leg half crippled, but didn't howl, didn't screech. It just blinked at him, cold, calculating. Another one was already moving. Callan swore beside him, the point of his short spear whipping up to catch the chin of a charging demon. The creature turned at the last second, claws raking along Callan's bracer. Sparks flew. Callan growled, twisted, and drove the butt of his weapon into its knee. The demon dropped, but didn't retreat. It slashed low. Callan leapt back, barely keeping footing on the moss-slick pavement. Two more emerged from behind a tangle of ivy-covered fencing, one on either side, flanking, herding. "They're surrounding us," Callan snapped, adjusting his stance. "I know," Ryder said. "Stay close." He could feel their eyes on him, not wild, not crazed, studying. One took a few steps forward, tilting its head like a predator testing prey for weakness. Ryder didn't give it the chance. He feinted right, then spun left and drove his blade straight into its chest, right into the pulsing blue spot. The demon's body spasmed once, then collapsed like a dropped puppet. No scream, no final hiss. Just silence. The scavenger, still bloodied from earlier, panicked. He turned to run, ignoring Ryder's sharp, "Don't." Too late. The final demon, the one that had been holding back, struck like lightning from the underbrush. It tackled the man hard, slamming him into the dirt. The man shrieked once, short and sharp, before the demon reared back to strike. Ryder didn't hesitate. He hurled his blade like a javelin. It flew through the mist and hit true, right in the demon's glowing mark. It dropped, twitching. But the scavenger wasn't moving. Callan rushed over, dropped to his knees, but after a second of trying to stem the bleeding, he looked up and shook his head. "Gone," he said quietly. Ryder stepped forward, retrieved his blade from the corpse. Around them, the fog began to settle again. The air was heavy. The birds, so loud just an hour ago, still hadn't returned. Ryder turned to Callan. "That last one, it didn't run." "No," Callan said, "it watched." They both turned to where the tree line was broken. The fifth demon, the one that hadn't joined the fight, was gone. Withdrawn, not defeated, not scared, just done. Ryder wiped blood and moss from his blade, using the sleeve of the dead man's jacket. "They're learning," he muttered. Callan looked at him. "What does that mean for us?" Ryder didn't answer. He just looked down the road ahead, mist curling around cracked pavement and creeping vines like the earth itself was holding its breath. They weren't just fighting demons anymore. They were fighting something that's learning its enemy. Smoke and silence. The morning fog hadn't lifted. It drifted low over the broken path like a ghost reluctant to move on, curling around their boots with every step. Wet leaves squelched beneath worn soles, and the trees loomed tall and heavy with moisture, their branches dripping as if the woods themselves had sweat through the night. Birdsong filled the air, shrill and frantic, as if the creatures of the wild knew what had happened beneath the canopy only hours before. Callan walked with a slight limp, his makeshift pole weapon resting across his shoulders. The wooden shaft was blood-stained and split near one end, but it had held, barely. He glanced sideways at Ryder, who moved ahead without a word, eyes fixed forward. The man's sleeveless torso was streaked with dried demon blood and dirt. and the air of silence around him was thicker than the fog. Callan cleared his throat. "Do you always fight like that?" he asked, a faint grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Or was that just you showing off?" Ryder didn't respond, didn't flinch, just kept walking, shoulders tense but steady, the weight of his blade across his back, like it belonged there more than he did. "Right," Callan muttered to himself. "Strong, silent type. Thought so." They stepped around a fallen tree, its trunk hollowed out by rot and swarming with tiny birds nesting inside. A pair of deer darted across a clearing in the distance, their hooves barely making a sound as they vanished into the trees. Nature didn't care what horrors had stalked the forest the night before. The world moved on, wild and alive. Callan's smile faded. "That demon, last night. It wasn't like the others," he said, quieter now. "Didn't snarl, didn't rush. It stalked. Waited, it knew what it was doing." Still nothing, just the crunch of gravel and the whisper of wind through wet leaves. Callan stopped walking. "You've seen them like that before, haven't you?" Ryder finally turned his head, the faintest nod, and just like that, the conversation ended. They walked on in silence, the trees beginning to thin around them. Moss-covered ruins jutted from the undergrowth, broken walls, bent signs, remnants of some old road that once connected a life long forgotten. Through a break in the hills, they saw it, a cluster of rooftops nestled in a shallow valley, smoke curling gently from a chimney or two. Weather-worn buildings, half swallowed by vines but intact. A village. Alive. Ryder stopped, eyes narrowing at the sight. He looked back at Callan. "We'll head there," he said, his voice low, rough like gravel. "See if there's a blacksmith." He nodded toward the battered pole across Callan's shoulders. "Get that thing turned into a proper spear." He took a step forward, then paused, glancing back one more time. "And maybe a bath," he added, "even a bed." Callan blinked, surprised at the hint of dry humor. He grinned. "Now you're talking." They walked toward the village, the forest behind them breathing mist and memory. The village came into view slowly as they descended the winding slope. It wasn't large, maybe 20 or 30 buildings clustered together, their wooden frames patched with sheet metal and salvaged stone. A low palisade fence circled the perimeter, more symbolic than defensive, made from scavenged logs and bits of rusted rebar. Smoke curled from a dozen chimneys, rising into the dimming sky like sighs from old lungs. Chickens clucked somewhere unseen, and a goat bleated lazily near a broken well. People watched from doorways and windows, faces worn by weather and worry. Suspicion lived in their eyes, the kind earned through hard years and quiet losses. But no one raised a weapon, and that was a start. Ryder stepped through the open gate without hesitation. Callan followed, nodding awkwardly to a wiry old man whittling wood by a porch. A small child peered out from behind his legs, eyes wide, gripping a wooden spoon like it might ward off evil. Inside the village, the buildings leaned toward each other like conspirators. Laundry hung from lines strung between crumbling rooftops, flapping in the breeze. Moss crept up walls, half the doors didn't match their frames. And yet, there was life here. A forge clanged somewhere ahead, the rhythmic bang of hammer on metal. They followed it. The blacksmith was a broad-shouldered woman with arms like tree trunks and a soot-covered face. Her apron was stitched from demon hide, black and tough, and her forge glowed with a stubborn red heat. She didn't stop working as they approached. "If you're here to cause trouble, do it fast," she said without looking up. "I've got steel to beat." Ryder dropped the broken pole weapon on her work table. She paused. Callan smiled nervously. "Think you can make that into a proper spear?" She finally looked up, eyes sharp beneath tangled grey hair. Her gaze flicked from the weapon to Ryder and lingered. "I can. Question is, can you afford it?" Ryder reached into his pouch and dropped 3 small items onto the table. A silver ring, a gear from some old-world machine, and a tooth from the night demon. The blacksmith stared at the tooth for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Give me a few hours," she said, and shoved the pieces into her apron. Later, they were given a room above the town's only tavern, a creaky place with uneven floors, a bar carved from an old church pew, and ale that tasted faintly of bark. The bath was little more than a tin basin and a kettle of boiled water, but it worked. Ryder sat by the window afterward, freshly cleaned, shirtless still, blade leaning against the wall beside him. Callan was snoring on a straw mattress, one arm hanging off the side like a discarded puppet. Outside, night settled slowly over the village. Lamps were lit, some powered by scavenged solar rigs, others by flame. The air was quiet, peaceful, too peaceful. Ryder's eyes drifted toward the tree line beyond the palisade, past the last crooked fences and chicken coops. Something moved. Not with the flitting skittishness of a fox or a bird. No, it stood. Tall, still, barely visible in the shadows where moonlight didn't touch. Its shape was wrong. Humanoid, but stretched. Elongated limbs, a hunched back, glowing cracks along its chest, faintly pulsing like embers beneath bark. A night demon, watching, waiting. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared through the mist, its face half covered in shadow, the other half bearing twisted ridges and blackened bone. Ryder didn't react, didn't wake Callan. He just watched it. And it watched him, until it finally turned and slipped back into the forest, silent as smoke.